Hi everyone. Today we are going to do a competitive analysis of popular JavaScript libraries and discuss why you should consider using Sencha for your enterprise web applications. My name is Art K. I'm the Developer Relations Manager at Sencha. You can follow me on Twitter or check out my blog. And if need be, you can send me an email directly, and I'll be happy to address any questions you have about this presentation. Now, in this presentation, we are going to talk about how Sencha is different than many of the popular tools and libraries that you may be familiar with. I will be mentioning a number of popular open source projects in a moment, and I want to be clear that I think many of these projects are great. These projects are maintained by some really smart and dedicated developers, all of whom are trying to make the web a better platform. These projects are fantastic for solving certain aspects of web development, but this discussion will be targeting enterprise web applications. And Sencha's position is simply that many open source projects neglect the very specific demands of enterprise software development. Let's begin by looking at Sencha's competitive landscape. Now, I'm sure that many of you are already familiar with one or more of these approaches to building applications. Each one of them certainly has its benefits. But what I'm hoping to show you over the next 30 minutes is that Sencha is a better solution for building enterprise web applications. And that's really a key distinction I need to make. Each one of these tools is great at what they do, but I am suggesting that enterprise applications require a lot more than any of these approaches brings to the table individually. To support that message, I've created a feature matrix which outlines the most important parts of all enterprise applications. Whether you're building a web application or a native app, the fact remains that every single enterprise application needs things like interface elements, like widgets, visualizations, the ability to theme and style the app, a view system, including mechanisms for templating or positioning, and an approach to managing logic and data. We will be revisiting this matrix in just a moment. First, let's consider a few things. Libraries and microframeworks like Angular, jQuery, BOOTSTRAP, and others are great. And while some are more popular than others, the simple fact remains that you, as the developer, are responsible for selecting the complete application stack from a wide variety of libraries. So think about that matrix you just saw a moment ago. By definition, libraries and microframeworks do not attempt to deliver that much functionality. Instead, they deliver very targeted pieces of code. So, in order to complete that entire functional matrix, you will need to assemble a lot of functionality from somewhere else. Most of the permissive open source code these days can be found on GitHub. So, if we look at the stats, GitHub hosts more than 1.2 million JavaScript repositories and more than 200,000 CSS repositories. On the flip side, 98% of these become abandoned after 1 year. So even if we consider just the most popular libraries today, things like AngularJS or Ember, we will still face the problems that you see listed on the screen. Now, if we assemble our own framework by combining Angular and jQuery, maybe BOOTSTRAP and D3 or others, this does give us a completely customized solution, and there's some merit to doing so. However, there are hidden costs to doing this when building enterprise web applications compared to using a single full-featured framework like ext.js. First, let's look at Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a CSS framework that helps with content, layout, animation, theming, and other things. It does have an attractive set of basic widgets, it has a layout system, and it's great for responsive design. But because it's only CSS, it doesn't provide any facilities for handling data, structuring your application, or doing some of the other bits on our feature matrix. The same can be said of AngularJS. Angular describes itself as a tool set for building your own framework. The key differentiator between Angular and other technologies is its ability to extend HTML using HTML5 custom elements that help to provide dynamic application behavior. For the most part, Angular is going to rely on the developer to create and manage layouts, touch gestures, and it lacks a component model for any UI elements. A different popular option these days is Ember.js. And in many ways, Ember is the framework most concerned with helping you structure and manage your application code. It provides a class system, data binding, state management, and other things. But it doesn't offer much in the way of help to build your application views because it relies on handlebars for its templating. And finally, we can look at the granddaddy of all libraries, which is jQuery combined with jQuery UI. jQuery itself is an incredibly small library. In fact, it provides minimal functionality for cross-browser DOM abstraction, AJAX, CSS selectors, and other things. So by itself, jQuery doesn't provide UI widgets or theming. This is provided by jQuery UI, which is developed by a separate community, creating widgets, and they do have their own theme roller, which is pretty cool. But jQuery fails to provide application structuring, as well as a variety of other features seen here on our matrix. So I think by now you kind of see the point I'm getting at, which is regardless of how good any of these libraries is on its own, each only includes a fraction of the functionality needed to assemble enterprise web applications. So I apologize for the cheesy Star Trek reference, but I think it's particularly relevant because we can't forget how complicated enterprise software really is. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, then at least remember these points. First, that enterprise software often stays in production for as long as 5 to 10 years, and sometimes longer. Few of the libraries we just mentioned support browsers that are more than 5 years old. But on the flip side, few, if any, enterprise corporations have the requirement of developing for, quote, modern browsers only. And finally, there is a high cost associated with the long-term maintenance of a customized stack of third-party libraries. So I've just spent the last few minutes talking about why the most popular JavaScript libraries are not a good choice for building enterprise web applications. How is Sencha different? For starters, our product line completely supports the full business application continuum. I'll talk about a few of these in detail shortly, but the point I'd like to drive home is that all of our products work together. They are fully integrated, meant for team development, and specifically designed to help build powerful enterprise web applications. Let's start with ext.js. Compared to the libraries and toolsets we've just seen, ext.js is a far more complete framework. It offers the broadest selection of UI widgets, a high-level charting package, as well as a lower-level drawing API, a rich package of containers, windows, themes, as well as an architectural package supporting both MVVM and MVC. Not shown on the matrix is the ability to support accessibility, RTL, and localization. In fact, the few places where ext.js lacks functionality It is designed to allow your development team to extend the framework according to a defined paradigm, which allows your code and the framework to coexist together. The long-term implications for application maintenance on this point are particularly important, and we'll cover those in just a moment. If we show the feature matrix in another way, this is what we can see, that EXTJS includes everything you need to build an enterprise web application without needing a cluster of third-party dependencies. Now, EXTJS has been around since 2007, far longer than most of the currently popular JavaScript libraries. Sencha has evolved over the years to focus on enterprise web application development, and our latest release of EXTJS includes a number of improvements and new features. So let's explore a few of these in detail. The EXTJS framework has long been the top choice for building enterprise desktop applications. But it should be clear by now that business people aren't always sitting behind their desktop computers or using a mouse. EXTJS 5 supports tablet devices out of the box, so there is literally nothing extra you need to do to take your desktop apps and use them on a tablet or touchscreen. Now, if you've ever tried to do this with AngularJS or Ember or some of the other popular micro-libraries, the truth is that mouse and touch events are very different. So while there may be some shims that exist to help with this, those may just be one additional dependency that you'd need for your application, and that's if they can help you do that at all. Next, we have charting, and EXTJS ships with its own fully customizable charting package. Now again, if you're using Angular, you first need to find a charting package, because that doesn't ship with that product. You might choose HighCharts, or D3, or something else, and there's a lot of good charting packages available. But the question remains, will you be able to customize and extend those libraries in a way that makes sense with the rest of your application stack? What if you need to build your own charts? Having the charting package built into EXTJS mitigates these challenges. Then there's widgets like the grid. EXTJS easily has the industry's most powerful grid widget. With features like buffered rendering and infinite scrolling, our grid outperforms the AngularJS grid module by leaps and bounds. Not to mention that our grid is far more customizable and fully integrated across the data package. We also just introduced these new things called grid gadgets, which are essentially widgets that render into each row and update live with the data. Doing this in any other framework would be extremely difficult. And again, you certainly wouldn't be able to match the grid performance you get with EXTJS. EXTJS also supports MVVM and MVC architectures, and we recently introduced support for two-way data binding. Now, AngularJS does support two-way data binding, but it's important to remember that EXTJS has this feature integrated across the entire widget library, something that AngularJS can't do. EXTJS supports URL routing and the ability to deep link your web applications. Then we have session management. The primary job of a session is to track records so all related parties can retrieve a reference to the same record object. By tracking all of these records, the session ensures that the contents of associations are coherently updated and maintained as you edit the data. EXTJS supports client-side sessions and even child sessions to help you maintain full control over the integrity of your data while users work. This is a feature not found in any of the competing microlibraries. Enterprise applications often need to think about accessibility, and EXTJS has this built directly into the framework. We even fully support things like localization and RTL. What's interesting is that AngularJS, their documentation makes it clear in order to do this, you'll have to manually choose how to implement many of the accessibility features. And RTL is not currently supported at all. BOOTSTRAP is well known for offering responsive design, but EXTJS has taken that idea a step further. We allow you to define both applications and widgets to change their behavior based on the responsiveness of the screen that you're viewing. Not only is this baked into the framework, so it's not a third-party dependency, but it's easy to use. You don't have to spend hours tweaking CSS because this feature is fully integrated across every widget in the framework. Finally, EXTJS offers greater browser support than any competing library. AngularJS even dropped IE8 support as of version 1.3, as did jQuery in their version 2.0. Also keep in mind that with Angular, Ember, and Bootstrap, most of the HTML and CSS coding falls directly onto you as the developer. So even if the library supports a particular browser, the nitty-gritty details of UI implementation are still your responsibility. That may be fine for small applications or websites. But in the enterprise, where an app may have literally hundreds or thousands of screens, this can be a huge headache. So let's take a final look at our feature matrix. The simple fact is that EXTJS includes everything you need to build powerful, customizable enterprise applications without any third-party dependencies. By now, you should understand how EXTJS is different than many of the popular tools and libraries that you may be familiar with. Let me spend another few minutes discussing the rest of the tools in Sencha's toolbelt. Sencha Touch is our mobile application framework. It's similar in concept to EXTJS, so it has more than 50 built-in components. It supports MVC, has themes that look like every major native platform, and it's fully integrated for native packaging via Cordova or PhoneGap. Next, we have Sencha Command, which is our command line suite of utilities for building enterprise applications. Sencha Command comes bundled with a number of features, including a JavaScript compiler, build script integration, the ability to fine-tune your applications for deployment, tight integration with native packaging through PhoneGap and Cordova, and a variety of other features. Then we have Sencha Space. We talked earlier about some challenges faced in the enterprise for building applications. But the enterprise also faces very unique challenges for deploying applications. On the one hand, web applications are ideal because they're quick to build and quick to deploy compared to native apps. But they're inherently insecure, and they can't interact with other web applications. On the flip side, native apps are ideal because we solve the security and interactivity problems of the web, but they're still a pain to manage and deploy across platforms and versions. If you're building them purely native, you also need to manage multiple code bases and often multiple development teams. Sencha Space solves these problems by giving you the best of both worlds. You can build secure web applications and deploy them quickly across many devices and platforms, all using HTML5. Here's a quick hit list of features that you get with Sencha Space. In short, it solves very unique problems for developers, for administrators, and for end users. Things that you simply can't do with Cordova and PhoneGap. So, at the end of the day, the enterprise needs a better way to deploy applications to their users. Sencha Space allows developers to build powerful, secure web applications across every device using HTML5, while also allowing IT to control device access to the applications, and they can do it all in real time. You can check out the Sencha website for more information about Sencha Space. In closing, Sencha has a ton of resources that dive even deeper into the reasons why EXTJS is the best tool for building enterprise web applications. Specifically, we have a white paper discussing in greater detail how EXTJS compares to the libraries we mentioned earlier in this presentation. We also have a webinar discussing the business value that Sencha brings to the enterprise, titled The ROI of JavaScript in Enterprise Software Development. And finally, SenchaCon, which is our company's yearly conference, is coming to San Francisco in April of 2015. We hope you can join us there.